Hey everyone, want to tell you about a really fun meeting I had yesterday with a client. This client has been in healthcare for a number of years. He works 4.5 days, typically a week, but it's a good 50 hours a week plus his commute. And he's really thinking about how to build wealth differently, how to really build additional income streams. And he got really plugged into this idea of owning a business. Now, I'm a big fan of owning a business, but somebody who's never really been an entrepreneur before really have got to start from the beginning. And what I really appreciate about him and his intentionality was he actually signed up for a course through a program, which I actually am a big fan of. And I think they really put together a good kind of walkthrough of how to buy a business. And so yesterday we had a really fun time actually going through the financials and the decks of two existing businesses that are dry cleaners. Now, dry cleaners may not sound sexy. It's certainly a stretch from the operating room that he's in as a high-level nurse practitioner in surgical. But let me tell you about these types of businesses. These types of businesses have oftentimes positive cash flow. They require very little inventory. They require very little labor, right? Typically only need to staff one person, maybe at transition times, two people, or busy times of the day. But to think about somebody doing a business as a absentee owner, you need to have a couple of things to consider. One, is the business easy to understand? And, thinking about him coming into a business like this with some training and some education around the systems, the equipment, the procedures, I think it's something that he could really learn really, really quick how to operate a business like this. So is it an easy business to understand? Does it require you to hire and staff a lot of people? And in this situation, he doesn't, right? We can run a business like this with minimal labor, even in a time when it's really hard to find good people and we have to pay a little bit more for talent. The third is this business inventory heavy? And it's not, right? So one of the businesses actually had a really unique model. It had a single location where all the equipment was. So this equipment is housed in one location, right? And so the operating costs are going to be higher. That's where you have all the dry cleaning coming in. But he has two additional locations. This owner has three separate locations. One is the operating location with the equipment, and the other two are drop-off locations. So I've never really thought about this, but there could really be a lot of dry cleaners on the corner that all they do is really receive customers' orders. They take that to a central location. That central location will do the servicing and bring it back to drop off and for the clients to pick up. So basically it's a point of sale. And so that's one of the things I really appreciated about this specific business. So I helped my client understand how these businesses were being valued. Now, in the first scenario, the business was being valued at one-time sales. So it's about a combined $570,000 of revenue, or 1.9 times net income. So one of the things I wanted him to understand is if he goes into this process, he will have to go through what's called due diligence, meaning they're going to open up the real books, they're going to open up the behind the scenes, and he's going to have the opportunity to go in and see what is this business really like. And so what I explained to him was that the way that this business is being valued is either by a multiplier of sales or a multiplier of net profit. And so what he wants to do is he wants to understand, what does the business really do on paper? Meaning, what were the actual sales? And so right now he's only evaluating based on an average monthly revenue. What he wants to do is he wants to look at the last 2 years of actual sales. And one of the things he wants to also understand is if those sales are lower last year than the year before, could they potentially be lower again? So are the sales also declining, right? And so if he looks at the actual sales, and let's just say the actual sales for these businesses are actually 520, right? So he can make a case that if I'm going to pay one-time sales, I'm not going to pay you $570,000. I'm going to pay you $520,000. But what if the sales are in decline? So you might want to understand with the owner why the sales have been in decline. So you can assume if you're a new owner, if you don't know your existing clients, if you don't know your repeat customers, if you don't know your places of potential lost revenue, and you haven't done any sales or marketing, could you have another lower year? And so you would use this to negotiate that purchase price of that business. Now let's talk about the net income. In a scenario where these businesses are producing about 190 to, let's just call it, the sale of a business is, anywhere between 190 to 290, whatever the number is. And you're looking at the expenses of that business. And in these, for example, 2 secondary locations, the owner operator is doing a lot of the labor himself. So he's paying himself below market value wages. And let's just say I look at one location and it looks like there's $2,000 of payroll per month. And I'm looking at the operating hours, so it's about 272 operating hours. That means if you had one person there every hour for 272 hours per month, you're really underpaying that person. You're paying that person $7 an hour, right? And if you want to be a semi-absentee owner, you're going to want to have some sort of assistant manager to be more present and be more engaged in that business. So you may want to pay somebody $10 to $15 an hour. And so another way for you to negotiate a sales price in the purchase of a business is to really challenge the labor required to run the business when you have to add back in the time and the discounted wages of an owner-operator. And so he can make a case here that there is $48,000 per year of underpaid salary because the owner is paying himself $7 an hour, where in his specific market, to hire somebody to be there in this type of business may require them to pay them $15 an hour to compete. And so he can now negotiate that price of that business is really worth maybe somewhere around $490,000 if you take into consideration some of these unaccounted for expenses or some of these rolled back in expenses. And that's an opportunity for my client to go in and maybe negotiate the purchase price and acquiring a business like this, like he has in mind. So anyways, having a lot of fun with this client. He's got a couple of other ideas, a couple of other industries that he's looking at, but he might actually buy a business this year. And so happy for him.